Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I'm your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and this is going to be a short and sweet podcast. It is episode 117. So today is going to be a little bit about Roe v. Wade and the reversal of that, or the repeal of it, or the overturn of it, whatever word you want to use. To describe that situation, I understand there are a lot of people that are angry about the Supreme Court overturning that ruling. I just want to let you know that the Supreme Court was completely correct in overturning that, and here's why. Regardless of whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, abortion is not a federal issue. It's not a federal mandate. It's not part of a federal law. It's actually a state's issue because technically the states handle those things in regards to things that are outside of the realm of the federal government. Unfortunately, back in the 70s when Roe v. Wade came about and abortion was legally protected at a federal level, it should have never been there. It was always at a state level. Unfortunately, because Roe v. Wade has been around so long and abortion has been legal at a federal level for so long, people are throwing their arms up in the air that are pro-choice and think that, oh, this is the end of the world or this is the end of freedom, and it's not. You can still get an abortion. I personally do not agree with abortions. I think it's very cruel. I think everybody has the right to be born, and I think to take away that right is very cruel and inhumane. Abortion is a form of eugenics. And we know from World War II and the Holocaust that eugenics is really bad. And it violates human rights all across the board. Now, mind you, eugenics is nothing new. It's been around for a long, long time. However, the Nazis really made it a killing machine. Unfortunately, in the United States, abortion has become a killing machine. I think there's been over 56 million abortions, legal abortions that is, since the 1970s. Since Roe v. Wade passed. And that's really sad because that's like the size of a country. So that means 56 million people are dead from abortion, and that's not even including the mothers that died. So, just so you know, whether or not you believe in abortion or not, you do need to know that abortion is not safe. It's not as safe as giving birth. It just isn't. Just FYI, there are 3 different types of abortions. There's, I think it's called surgical. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. It's called surgical, chemical, and therapeutic. Surgical, this is going to get kind of graphic. So if you're a minor, you shouldn't be listening to this anyway. But surgical is where a OBGYN that is also an abortionist, that's where they dilate the cervix of a woman and they cut up the body of the baby. They cut up the limbs and the torso. They also drill a hole at the base of the skull and they suck out the brain. Then they have a type of mallet or tong that crushes the skull. So that way they can suck out the rest of the body more easily because the skull typically is the largest part of a child. So that's surgical. The chemical abortion is where a OBGYN that is also an abortionist will dilate the cervix to get into the womb, and they will pump in a chemical burning agent that burns up the fetus alive inside the woman's womb, and also can burn up the woman's womb, like it can permanently sterilize her. We know that this happens because there are women that have been accidentally sterilized during abortions. It does happen. And they don't realize it until later when they're trying to have children and they cannot conceive. Also, there have been some children, some people that have survived a chemical abortion, like they were the baby inside the womb and that horrible chemical was doused all over them. And it's usually the nurse or the medical assistant that realizes the baby is still alive, and they're the ones that rush it to the hospital. It's not the abortionist. It tells you a lot about people that perform abortions, right? So the last one that I'm aware of that they have, and I haven't researched this since college because I had to write a paper on different types of birth control and I hated it. But it was a topic that one of my teachers gave me, one of my professors gave me in college, and I was like, this is not part of my lifestyle, but I just looked at it from a medical point of view. I was like, here's what these are. It's really creepy. And these are not the morning after pill. The morning after pill doesn't actually kill a baby. It just makes it so the egg cannot be fertilized. So with the morning after pill, it's just a higher dose of, I think, of estrogen, one of the hormones, and it makes it so the egg is protected from being fertilized by the sperm, so it doesn't actually kill anything. But it is still a form of birth control. A therapeutic abortion is where I think the pill is called, or the pills that they give you, I think it's called RU486. And these pills give you what they call a spontaneous abortion, which it is not spontaneous because it's intentional. A spontaneous abortion is where your body just expels your child. You know, there's something wrong with the cells in the child's body, or, you know, for some reason the body rejects the pregnancy, and that's a spontaneous abortion. Taking a pill, doing anything to get rid of a child is not spontaneous, it's intentional. And it's quite cruel. So what you do with the therapeutic abortion, you go to an OBGYN, again, that is an abortionist, and hopefully they give you a pregnancy test and an ultrasound to see if you are in fact pregnant, because there are some abortionists that have gone to prison or have been arrested for performing abortions on women that were not even pregnant. They just wanted the money. But anyway, a therapeutic abortion is where this doctor will give you, I don't know how many pills, but they give you a set of pills to take, some at the office and the rest of the pills you take at home, and it causes you to have a miscarriage. Unfortunately, these pills have also killed women, like they've bled out at home. Like they bled to death. So, as I've said before, abortions are not safe. They can be very dangerous. And here's another thing. Most abortions, whether they are chemical or surgical, they are ultrasound guided or directed, meaning the doctor is performing the abortion, but they have an ultrasound technician that is, you know, using the ultrasound technology to show the doctor where the child is so they can dismember it and then suck it out of the woman's womb. They have a specific type of vacuum pump that sucks out the baby. So then it is no longer a baby, it becomes medical waste because it's been crushed down into a liquid. And so then the doctor has to find a way to get rid of the medical waste. This is a problem for some doctors because some of them don't want to pay the money to dispose of it properly, and they can be very cruel in what they do with this. And we had that happen here in Oklahoma. There actually was an abortionist by the name of Dr. Patel here in Oklahoma City. He was performing illegal and unlawful, immoral, unethical abortions here in Oklahoma. He was one of the doctors that was performing abortions on women that were not even pregnant. He was telling them that they were pregnant, and yet they didn't have a baby in them. They were not pregnant at all, no way, shape, or form. And what he got caught doing, but he didn't actually go to jail or get arrested for this part. What he was originally known for back in the 80s, he was known for technically improperly disposing of the medical waste of these aborted fetuses, these aborted children. Because remember, when they crush the child or dismember it and suck it out of the womb, they have to crush it down to make it liquid, typically. They put that crushed up child or infant in a huge drum with all the other children that they've killed in terms of abortion. And then what he would do, he bought a piece of land out in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. I can't remember what town it was. He bought a field. And he would dump these huge drums of fetus medical material, I guess you could say. Medical waste is what it's called once the person's dead and they've crushed it. He would dump it out in the field and set it on fire. The locals were very upset once they figured out what he was doing. They reported it to the police. Unfortunately, there's nothing on the books about setting fetuses on fire in a field. Even though it's grotesque and cruel, it shows you just how much this guy did not value human life. And so he never went to jail for that. He never got arrested for that. What got him arrested and kicked out of the medical community and he lost his license was he tried to perform an abortion on an undercover female cop that was not pregnant, because there was a case where a woman thought she was pregnant. She went to go see this abortionist. Instead of going to her OBGYN to see, hey, why have I missed my period? She just automatically assumed she was pregnant because I guess she was pregnant. She was currently sexually active, this patient or whatever. And so she went to go see an abortionist. She unfortunately went to see Dr. Patel. He lied to her and said that she was pregnant. He performed an abortion on her. And I don't know if she died from the abortion, but she did not have, how to describe this, she was not pregnant. She actually had cancer. So there was no way she could have been pregnant. Either she survived and reported this because she found out later she had cancer, or she died because of the abortion. And one of her relatives, I think it was her sister, that reported it to the police, that this guy, Dr. Patel, this abortionist, performed an unlawful procedure on her sister, and there's no way she could have been pregnant. And so that's when the police had an undercover female police officer go to the abortion clinic and request an abortion, and she was not pregnant at all. And so they were about to perform the abortion, or they were leading her into the room to perform an abortion. And that's when they made the arrest, because he was going to perform an abortion on someone that wasn't even pregnant. So, what's interesting is that if we don't have laws on the books outlawing something very evil, then you can't arrest someone and you can't stop them from causing harm to other human beings. That's what we learned with Dr. Patel, unfortunately. And he hurt a lot of women. It was really bad. But I mention that because, just because an abortionist will perform an abortion on you, that doesn't mean that they're your friend or they care about you. Dr. Patel, I don't know if he still is a millionaire, but he was a millionaire when he had his abortion clinic. These doctors are not poor, they're not broke, they're very much wealthy, and they very much like to make money, but in a very unethical manner. Like, the way that they make money is they end human life. So that's very concerning there. But if you are concerned about not being able to have an abortion, you shouldn't really be concerned, because it never should have been at a federal level, because the federal government is not involved in medical stuff like that. That's not its job. The federal government is about taxes, citizenship, protecting the home front, having a military, having representatives in this country, balancing the budget. There are things that the federal government is supposed to do. So when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, they did the right thing. Regardless of whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, that's actually a states' rights issue. That's at a state level. Because think about it, states don't deal with citizenship per se. That's a federal level, because that deals with the United States. Abortion is a states level. It's a states issue because you're dealing with individual citizens within individual states. That's why. So even though it has been repealed at a federal level, you can still get an abortion at a state level depending on what state you live in. And if you are an individual that uses abortion as birth control, I strongly encourage you to stop doing that, because you're destroying, first of all, human life, and secondly, you're taking a risk of dying in the process and sterilizing yourself. It's better to be on birth control, use the pill. That's way better than doing one of those procedures I just discussed, which, yes, they are grotesque and it's brutal, but that's what it is. We have to call a spade on this show, right? So, if you live in a state that does not, or is no longer going to allow abortions, then just move to a state that will allow them. There are plenty of states that will do that, because we have quite a few states that are pro-choice, they're not pro-life. So, you just need to move to whichever state you feel the most comfortable that you can get your type of medical care, because, an abortion is not a right. It's a choice. It's a medical procedure that you choose to get. It's not protected under federal law. It's something that you technically purchase and something that you decide to do. It's not the same as citizenship. It has nothing to do with our tax code. It has nothing to do with the military. It has nothing to do with Social Security or welfare unless, they were using tax dollars to pay for abortions, which is completely wrong to do that. Because I personally don't want my tax dollars being used to take someone else's life like that. That's horrible and sick. We should at least give people a chance to be born. I just think it's really cruel to not even give someone a chance to live outside the womb. Another thing that's really interesting in regards to Roe v. Wade being overturned is that, let's say you're pro-choice and you serve on a jury, and let's say it's a murder trial. Let's say, for example, which would be at a state level, right? Because crimes like that are prosecuted by your state attorney, right? Or your district attorney, for your district. Well, let's say there was a home invasion and a pregnant woman died. Well, that guy would not be charged with just one count of murder. He would be charged with 2 counts of murder. Because 2 people died. The mother and the child. The unborn baby. What's interesting is that, if a woman dies and she's pregnant, both lives count. But whenever a woman goes and gets an abortion, the life that she's carrying in her womb doesn't count. That's the problem. That's the issue. All life has value. That group that says Black Lives Matter? Well, I say all lives matter. All lives matter, especially the unborn. What chance do they have if someone's trying to kill them in the womb? That's ridiculous. You would think the womb would be sacred. And I'll close with this. There was a false title or headline I saw online. There's this couple in the United States, which who even knows if this is true, but this is a really good example of how the news media will lie or spin something and not even tell you the truth about how things actually work with this. So there's supposedly this couple that the woman had a partial miscarriage and supposedly she can't get an abortion now. Here's the thing, if you have a partial miscarriage, you don't get an abortion. You get what's called a D&C, which is where your OBGYN, not an abortionist, an OBGYN will dilate the cervix and remove whatever tissue is left in the woman's womb that was not expelled naturally. That's not an abortion. An abortion is where a baby is killed by the doctor, whether surgically, chemically, or therapeutically. A miscarriage is where a child has already died. Like they either died in the womb and they're stillborn, or they died on the way out. So if you have a miscarriage, it's not an abortion. It's a completely different procedure because you're not actually terminating a life. The life has already been terminated by nature, basically, by the human body or by something that didn't go right in the womb, whatever the case may be. So those two things, they are completely different. So just be aware that if ever you have a miscarriage and the doctor has to go in and, remove some of the tissue and things like that, that's not an abortion. Because your baby already died, unfortunately. Again, that's called a D&C. You can look it up. It's a medical procedure. OBGYNs have to be trained in it. And it's very clear that that is not an abortion. Because they're not killing anything. They're not destroying human life. Like, those are two totally different procedures. And also, it's a different medical code. Like, if it was the same, it'd have the exact same medical code, but it doesn't. So just recognize when people are lying to you, especially in the news media, especially online, especially these special interest groups. Like, on this show, I just say it like it is. If you're new to this show, just so you know, I'm very blunt, and this is probably one of the most blunt episodes I've ever done because we're talking about something very graphic, but, we're adults, and we need to say it like it is, because I think a lot of people are ignorant on what exactly happens in abortion. It's like, if you don't know that it actually is killing a person, then, you know, you're pretty ignorant, and you're not paying attention to what actually happens in nature. I mean, it's just, you know, we're supposed to value all human life. And abortion, unfortunately, that's eugenics. And in case you don't know what eugenics is where someone else besides you decides whether or not you live or die, and more than likely they want to terminate you. Sorry to be so blunt, but that's what it is. But anyway, kind of a serious episode, but just FYI, that's what that stuff is. Please be aware. And please, you know, when you vote, vote for human life. Vote for your country. Vote for the safety of the unborn. Because if we do not protect the unborn, I mean, what makes us safe, really? I mean, because if you're not protecting the unborn, then you're authorizing eugenics to be used on anyone and everyone, and it should not ever be used. Eugenics is completely and utterly wrong. It's very unethical. And if you need evidence of that, just look up what the Nazis did in the concentration camps. I think that's a pretty clear example of what eugenics is and why we should not ever practice it ever again. But I will go ahead and end this podcast. But until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And please do what you can to be educated, care about your country, and care about your fellow man, woman, and child. And that includes children that are not born yet. Until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.